If Dignity paid rent, Zay would be rich. Unfortunately, Dignity paid in nods, half smiles, and being told, "We'll circle back," which was corporate for never. Rent, on the other hand, demanded money. Loudly. Monthly. With no sense of humor whatsoever. Zay stared at her computer screen as if it might apologize. It didn't. The spreadsheet glowed back at her, rows of numbers she had prepared, corrected, and double-checked, now being presented by someone else at the far end of the open plan office. "Great work," her supervisor said, beaming at Trevor. Trevor nodded modestly. "Team effort." Zay choked on air. She was the team. Trevor hadn't known what a pivot table was 2 days ago. Yesterday, he'd asked her if Excel had an undo button in real life. She raised her hand slightly. Not enough to be disruptive, just enough to be visible. No one looked. Her nameplate, if you could call it that, sat crooked on her desk. It read, Zay, no surname. HR said it was a system issue. It said it wasn't their department. Management said, "Let's not make this a thing." So she existed in the office like a footnote no one read. People passed her desk without greeting. Emails skipped her. Meetings happened around her. She once found out about a deadline because the printer jammed and spat out a memo she wasn't copied on. Even the office plant received more acknowledgement. At least people watered it. Zeh? Trevor leaned over her desk, chewing gum like it owed him money. "Can you grab the coffee order?" She looked up slowly. "I'm not the intern." "Oh." He blinked. "Right, sorry. Habit." She waited. He didn't correct himself. Zay smiled, the tight, professional smile she'd perfected. The one that said, "I am 5 seconds away from flipping this desk and living in the woods." "Sure," she said. "Coffee?" Trevor grinned, relieved. "You're a lifesaver." No one had ever been saved by coffee. At best, it delayed the inevitable. She grabbed her wallet and stood. The office buzzed on, keyboards clacking, phones ringing, ambition humming loudly in the air. She slipped through it unnoticed, a ghost in sensible shoes. In the elevator, she checked her balance. Enough for one coffee. Not a fancy one. No extra shots, no oat milk. Just coffee. Brown. Honest. Cheap. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirrored wall. Tired eyes. Neutral clothes. Hair pulled back not because it looked good, but because it stayed out of the way. She made a face at herself. "Don't worry," she muttered. "If this goes badly, we can always fake our own death." The elevator chimed. Freedom. Outside, the city breathed. Cars honking, people arguing, someone laughing too loudly into a phone. Zay crossed the street, dodging a man who walked like sidewalks were personal suggestions. The cafe sat on the corner, warm and inviting. She stepped inside and was immediately assaulted by the smell of roasted beans and financial irresponsibility. She queued, counting coins in her palm. When it was her turn, she ordered with the solemnity of someone making a life choice. "One small black coffee." The barista nodded. No judgment, a professional. Zay exhaled. Victory. Cup in hand, she pushed the door open and stepped back onto the sidewalk, already calculating how long she could make this coffee last. That was when she collided with something solid. Very solid. The collision happened at exactly the wrong angle. Not dramatic enough to knock either of them down, not gentle enough to be ignored. Zay's coffee sloshed violently, brown liquid cresting the rim like it had ambitions. She staggered back half a step, arm jerking up on instinct, heart spiking. "Oh." She didn't get to finish. "Watch where you're going," the man said smoothly. Smooth like practiced arrogance, like mirrors loved him. Zay looked up. And there it was. The face, annoyingly symmetrical, sharp jaw, dark eyes that carried the relaxed confidence of someone who had never once questioned whether the world liked him. He was dressed expensively in a way that pretended not to care. Tailored coat, polished shoes, posture that said, "I do not rush for anything." He glanced at the coffee she'd nearly spilled on him. Then back at her. A slow smile curved his mouth. "Or," he added, eyes flicking lazily over her face, "are you blinded by my handsomeness?" There it was, the last straw snapping in surround sound. Something in Zay's brain powered down, specifically the part responsible for survival instincts and workplace politeness. She stared at him. Really stared. The way a mechanic looks at a car that's making a suspicious noise. "Wow," she said softly. "You said that out loud." He chuckled. Actually chuckled. "I tend to do that." "Fascinating." She tilted her head. "Quick question. Has anyone ever lied to you for money?" His smile sharpened. "Excuse me?" "Because that confidence?" She gestured vaguely at his face. "It's not natural. It's cultivated. Like mold. In a damp basement." Someone behind them stopped walking. Zay took one step closer, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "You're not handsome," she said. "You're aggressively average with excellent posture." The smile froze. A man nearby coughed. Someone else snorted. "I'm sorry," he said, blinking once. "Oh, don't interrupt," she waved him off. "I'm on a roll, and frankly, I don't get these opportunities often." She circled him slowly, coffee in hand, eyes narrowed in professional assessment. "You have the face of a man who peeked in a bathroom mirror. Strong jaw, sure, but it's doing all the work. Your eyes are giving empty conference room." His brows drew together. "You're being ridiculous." "Sir," she said solemnly, "you look like a shampoo commercial that lost its soul." A woman walking past burst into laughter and immediately pretended to be on her phone. Zay stopped directly in front of him. "Ugly," she said clearly. Silence. The word landed flat, heavy, undeniable. "Ugly," he repeated, as if testing a foreign language. "Capital U," she nodded. "Bold font, maybe underlined. Not italics. That's too kind." "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, stiff now, offense leaking through his tone. "Oh, I do." She leaned in. "You're the kind of man who thinks expensive clothes are a personality. They're not. They're a distraction, like curtains over a cracked wall." Someone actually clapped. Once. Quickly. Then stopped. His jaw tightened. "You're rude." "You opened with vanity," she replied. "I responded with honesty. It's a public service." She took a sip of her coffee. Slow, deliberate. "Also," she added thoughtfully, "your smirk is doing you no favors. It's not charming. It's haunted." "Haunted?" "Yes. Like something bad happened to it emotionally, and now it takes it out on strangers." A man nearby whispered, "Oh my God." Zay stepped back, finally satisfied. "Anyway," she said brightly, "watch where you're going. That face could hurt someone." She walked past him, shoulder brushing his coat. And just like that, she was gone. The sidewalk resumed breathing. People moved again, murmurs bubbling up behind her. "Did you hear? She just... No way!" Irian Koval did not move. He stood exactly where she left him, the city flowing around his stillness like water around a rock. Ugly. No one had ever. He lifted a hand slowly and touched his cheekbone, as if it might have changed shape in the last 30 seconds. Ugly. Across the street, Zay didn't look back. She didn't see the way his eyes followed her until she disappeared into the building. Didn't see the faint crease between his brows. Not anger, not yet. Something else. Confusion. Offense. And, far more dangerous, interest. Irian Koval had been called many things in his life. Intimidating. Brilliant. Untouchable. Once, during a particularly aggressive negotiation, a man had called him soulless. No one had ever called him ugly. He stood in the private elevator of his building, staring at his reflection as the doors slid shut with a whisper of money and discretion. Ugly. The word followed him upward. He adjusted his posture slightly. Straighter. The reflection complied, still not seeing it. The elevator chimed. He didn't move. Instead, he tilted his head. Jawline. Present. Eyes, symmetrical. Hair, cooperative. He frowned. That was new. He released it and tried again. Neutral face. The one that made entire boardrooms sweat. The reflection looked expensive. He scowled. That one usually worked. The elevator cleared its throat with another polite chime. Later, he muttered to no one and stepped out into the marble lobby of his penthouse floor. Inside his apartment, the lights responded automatically, bathing the space in soft gold. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city stretched beneath him, obedient and alive. He walked past it all and straight into the bedroom. The mirror there was full length, unforgiving, designed for honesty. Irian stopped in front of it, ugly. He leaned closer, too close. He raised one eyebrow, then the other, pulled his mouth into a smile. Not the public one, but a tentative version, as if testing unfamiliar equipment. The reflection smiled back. He dropped it immediately, annoyed. Ridiculous, he said. Still, he turned his head left. Right. Profile, other profile. He squinted. Nothing. He exhaled sharply and stepped away. This was absurd. One woman, a stranger with a disposable coffee and a reckless mouth. And yet, he went to his office. The wall-sized screen blinked to life at his gesture. He paused only briefly before pulling up the street security feed from earlier that afternoon. There it was. The collision. He watched himself speak, watched the smirk form, the casual confidence, the assumption. Then, her. He leaned forward. She was smaller than he remembered, not fragile, sharp, her face animated, eyes bright with something dangerous. Amusement. He watched her mouth move. No audio, but he remembered every word. Ugly. He replayed it. Again. Her expression as she said it wasn't cruel. That was what bothered him most. It was honest. He froze the frame on her face, zoomed in. Her eyes weren't impressed. They weren't afraid. They weren't trying to impress him back. They were evaluating. Irian straightened slowly. No one looked at him like that. Ever. He scrubbed a hand down his face and stood abruptly, pacing the room. Ugly. He stopped in front of the mirror again, this time in his office. Smaller, subtler, still ruthless. He tried smiling again, softer this time. The reflection looked almost kind. He scowled. Absolutely not. He attempted something else, tilted his chin down, let his gaze harden. Predatory, effective, ugly. No. He ran a hand through his hair, dislodging the careful order. The mirror showed a man slightly undone. He stared. This version looked different, not worse. Just... He shook his head and stepped back. This was a waste of time. He sat at his desk and tapped a command into the console. Identify subject, he said calmly. The system responded instantly, pulling data from the footage. Female, approximate age, clothing analysis, location history. Name field blinked. Empty. Irian leaned in. No surname? He murmured. He pulled up the internal database, cross-referenced faces, employment records. There she was. Zay. No last name, no emergency contact, no notable history. A ghost with an employee ID. That bothered him more than the insult. Ugly he could dismiss. Invisibility, apparently, was a pattern. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. The city lights reflected in the glass behind him, framing his silhouette in power he rarely thought about. Somewhere. A woman was finishing a coffee she couldn't afford, completely unaware she had disrupted his equilibrium. Irian stared at her file. Then, very slowly, he smiled. "Interesting," he said. And for the first time in a long while, he didn't recognize himself in the mirror at all. By morning, Irian Koval had decided two things. First, the insult was not the problem. Second, the missing name absolutely was. He reviewed her file again. Zay. No surname, no emergency contact, no department ownership. She existed in the system the way placeholders did. Temporary, forgettable, easy to erase. That irritated him far more than being called ugly. Irian disliked anomalies. He disliked them even more when they were unintentional. He opened a secure channel on his desk console. The interface responded instantly. "Bring up employee conduct reports," he said. A grid appeared. Clean, neutral, clinical. He selected New Report. He did not hesitate. Subject: Zay Incident. Public disturbance. Inappropriate conduct. Location: external premises, adjacent to company property. Summary: verbal harassment of a private individual. He paused briefly over the word harassment. Technically accurate, emotionally dishonest. He continued anyway. His tone remained calm, detached, surgical. This was not anger. This was correction. The report auto-populated with timestamps, footage references, and cross-department tags. At the bottom of the page, the system prompted recommended action, termination, probation, review. Irian selected review. Not mercy. Control. He submitted the report and closed the file. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. He stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. The city stretching beneath him in orderly grids. Power hummed quietly in the walls. The building, the systems responding to his presence. Still, his thoughts returned to one line on the screen. No surname. He'd built companies from chaos, kingdoms from nothing. No one important lacked a name. At precisely 10:17 a.m., Zay's computer chimed. She stared at the notification like it might start laughing. HR meeting requested. Mandatory location, conference room. Sea time. Immediate. She glanced around the office. Trevor was mid-laugh at something on his phone. 2 desks down, someone loudly discussed lunch plans. The office plant was being watered again. Of course it was. Her screen chimed again. Reminder. Attendance required. Zay leaned back in her chair and exhaled. "Well," she muttered, grabbing her jacket, "it's been real." She stood, earning exactly 0 reactions, and walked toward the conference rooms. Halfway there, she passed the HR assistant, who avoided eye contact with Olympic-level commitment. That was new. Inside conference room C, the lights were already on. Her supervisor sat stiffly at the table. Beside him, a woman from HR smiled too tightly. Across from them sat a man in an immaculate suit she didn't recognize. He looked up as Zay entered, and smiled. Not the smirk from the street, something colder. Her stomach dropped. "Oh," Zay said softly. "You." The man folded his hands on the table. "Good morning," he said pleasantly. "Zay." He pronounced her name carefully, like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. Her supervisor cleared his throat. "Zay, please have a seat." She didn't. She crossed her arms instead. "So," she said, glancing between them. Then back at the man. "Is this about the coffee or the personality flaw?" The HR representative blinked. The man's smile sharpened. Irian Koval leaned back in his chair, eyes never leaving her. "We'll get to that," he said calmly. Zay's computer chimed again, somewhere back at her desk. She had the distinct feeling it wouldn't matter if she missed it. Something told her this meeting was going to last a while. Conference room C had never felt so small. Zay finally sat, mostly because standing would have required energy she suddenly did not possess. Her chair made a quiet, traitorous squeak as she leaned back. The man across from her adjusted his cufflinks. Her supervisor cleared his throat again. The nervous kind this time. "Zay," he said, not meeting her eyes. "This is Mr. Koval." Zay blinked. "That's fun," she said. "Is that first name or last name?" The HR representative flinched. The man smiled faintly. "Irian Koval," he said, Chief Executive Officer. Silence. Absolute soul-evacuating silence. Zay's brain shut down in stages. First went sarcasm, then balance, then hope. CEO. She stared at him. Actually stared. This was the man she'd called ugly, publicly, with witnesses. "Oh," she said weakly. Her supervisor sat up straighter, suddenly alert in the presence of capital letters. "Sir, if I may—" "You may not," Irian said without looking at him. Her supervisor immediately folded like an abandoned lawn chair. Zay watched it happen with horrified fascination. Right. Power. That explained the posture, the confidence, the way reality seemed to pause around him. Her panic arrived late but loud. "I just want to say," she began quickly, hands up, "that I'm very passionate about honesty, but I also believe in growth and learning and—" "Sit," Irian said. She was already sitting. He tilted his head slightly. "Apologies. Habit." The HR representative smiled again, this time nervously. "Mr. Koval has raised concerns about an incident involving you yesterday." Zay closed her eyes. Of course he had. "I didn't know he was—" She gestured vaguely at him. "This." "That," Irian said calmly, "is not relevant." Her supervisor nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely not relevant." Zay opened one eye. "Is anyone here capable of finishing a sentence that disagrees with him?" No one answered. She exhaled and sat up straighter. "Look, I didn't assault him. I didn't spill coffee on him. I didn't even curse. I merely offered constructive feedback." Irian's brow twitched. "Constructive," he repeated. "Yes," she nodded, "on his personality." Her supervisor made a strangled sound. Irian leaned forward, elbows on the table, fingers interlaced. "You publicly insulted me," he said evenly, "in front of witnesses." Zay swallowed. "You opened with a mirror. That is not a defense. It's context." The HR representative cleared her throat. "Zay, do you understand the seriousness of the situation?" Zay laughed once, quiet, disbelieving. "Do you understand how many times I've been ignored in this building?" She shot back. "I could walk through the lobby on fire and people would ask me to put the smoke somewhere else." Her supervisor stared at the table. Irian watched her closely. Something shifted behind his eyes. "Be that as it may," he said, voice smooth. "Your behavior created damage." "Damage to what?" she snapped. "Your ego?" Silence again. Then, "Yes." She blinked. He didn't smile. "I do not tolerate disorder," Irian continued, "or disrespect. You disrupted both." Zay leaned back, arms crossing. Panic gave way to irritation, hot, familiar, and oddly comforting. "Fine," she said. "Fire me." Her supervisor gasped. Irian studied her for a long moment. "No," he said finally. She frowned. "No?" "No," he repeated. "You will fix the damage." Her stomach dropped. "Fix it how?" she asked cautiously. He straightened, every inch of him settling into something immovable. "You will do exactly what I say," he said, "for a limited time. In exchange, your employment remains intact." Zay stared at him. "That's vague," she said. "Is there a form?" The HR representative blinked. "A form?" "Yes," Zay nodded seriously. "Terms, conditions, fine print. Fonts I don't trust." Irian paused. Then he said, "There is no form." She sighed. "That figures." Her supervisor leaned forward, eager. "Zay, I strongly advise—" She held up a hand. "I know. I'm expendable." That did it. Irian's gaze sharpened. "Wrong," he said. She looked at him. "You are useful. he corrected. Which is why you are still here. She snorted. Wow. Be still my self-esteem. He stood. The room seemed to straighten with him. Report to my office tomorrow morning, he said. We will discuss your restitution. Zay swallowed. And if I don't? She asked. He met her eyes. Then you are finished, he said calmly. Here, elsewhere, everywhere. Her supervisor nodded like this was perfectly reasonable. Zay stood slowly. She smoothed her jacket, lifted her chin. Fine, she said. But for the record, Irian arched a brow. She smiled thinly. Still ugly. The HR representative gasped. Irian watched her walk out, and for the second time in 2 days, he did not know whether to be furious or impressed. Irian Koval's office did not look like a place where jokes survived. It was all glass and steel, the kind of minimalist perfection that suggested money was not something one worried about, but something one controlled. The desk was massive, immaculate. The city spread behind it like a conquered map. Zay stood in the doorway, clutching a borrowed notepad. She took it all in. Wow, she said, this screams emotionally unavailable. Irian didn't look up from his tablet. Sit. She did. Now, he continued, tone clinical, your terms. She perked up. Ah, there are terms. Rules, he corrected. Follow them, and this matter ends. She clicked her pen. I'm listening, Ugly. His stylus paused. Rule 1, he said slowly. You will address me professionally. She nodded. Of course, Mr. Ugly. That is not professionally ugly, she clarified. He ignored her. Rule 2, he continued. You will cease all personal commentary regarding my appearance. She wrote something down. I'll circle back, she said. His jaw tightened. Rule 3, you are now my temporary assistant. She looked up. Temporary? 30 days. She blinked. That's it? I was expecting indentured servitude. Do not push this, he warned. She smiled sweetly. I thrive under pressure. Rule 4, he said, pressing on. You will accompany me to all meetings, public events, and engagements where I require an audience, she supplied. Support, he finished tightly. Right, emotional support assistant. He glared. Rule 5, he said. You will not embarrass me. Zay laughed, full-bodied, unapologetic. Oh, we're doomed, she said. Irian leaned back, eyes narrowing. Do you find this amusing? No, she said honestly. I find it educational. She flipped a page. Are there dress codes? Because I don't own anything that says, I respect authority. You will dress appropriately. She nodded. Business ugly. That word. I know, she said. Triggering. He exhaled slowly through his nose. You will report to me at 8 a.m. daily, he continued. You will answer when spoken to. You will not argue. She raised a finger. Define argue. Disagreeing verbally. Oh, she said. Then no. I can't do that. He stared at her. That is not optional, he said. Then we're at an impasse, she replied cheerfully. Silence stretched. Irian studied her like a problem that refused to solve itself. You are enjoying this, he said. Zay tilted her head. Isn't it obvious? He stood. She tensed slightly, then relaxed when he merely walked around the desk. He stopped in front of her. Close. Too close. You think this is a game, he said quietly. I think, she replied, meeting his gaze, that if you didn't like me here, I wouldn't be. Something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance, recognition. He stepped back. Collect your access badge, he said. HR will update your role. She stood. Do I get a title? Assistant. She wrinkled her nose. Boring. He hesitated. Executive assistant, he amended. She smiled. See? Growth. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, she added casually. One more thing. He closed his eyes briefly. What? If I'm fixing your damage, she said, you might want to stop starting conversations with your face. She walked out. The door shut softly behind her. Irian remained where he was. Then, against his will, a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. He froze. Slowly, he lifted a hand and smoothed it away. Disgusted. Unacceptable, he muttered, but the room felt quieter without her, and for reasons he did not yet understand. He already missed the noise. Chapter 7, Office Chaos, Executive Edition. By 8:07 a.m., Irian Koval's executive floor was in crisis, not because of market volatility, not because of hostile takeovers, not even because of the board, because Zay had arrived with a paper bag. She strolled in beside him as the elevator doors opened, chewing thoughtfully. Morning, she said to the row of executives waiting outside the conference room. They froze. One man dropped his tablet, another actually bowed. Zay waved. Wow, this is either a cult or you're all deeply afraid of HR. Irian didn't slow his stride. You are late, she checked her watch. I was early, emotionally. He ignored her and entered the boardroom. They followed. The room was all glass, chrome, and terror. A long table, screens glowing with graphs that looked expensive and threatening. The board members sat straighter the moment Irian took his seat. Zay dropped into the chair beside him and placed the paper bag on the table. It crinkled. Every head turned. Irian glanced at it. Slowly. Carefully. What is that? Snacks, she said. For morale. He stared at the bag like it might explode. We do not eat during meetings. Zay frowned. That explains the hostility. She reached inside and pulled out a granola bar. Set it gently beside his tablet. For you, she said. You look like someone who forgets food is a thing. The CFO made a strangled noise. Irian leaned closer, voice low. Remove that. No. The meeting began. Irian stood, commanding the room with ease. Charts shifted, numbers moved, people nodded like dashboard ornaments. Our Q3 acquisition strategy is aggressive, Zay cut in, raising a hand, but also slightly unhinged. The room stopped breathing. Irian turned to her slowly. Do not interrupt me. She shrugged. You paused. That's conversational consent. Someone choked on air. Irian continued, jaw tight. As I was saying, your projections don't account for employee burnout, Zay added. Also, this slide is mislabeled. She pointed. Silence. The COO squinted. She's correct. Irian stared at the screen. She was. He cleared his throat. Noted. Zay smiled. Teamwork. The meeting staggered onward. 5 minutes later, Irian said, We will expand into— Wait, Zay said. That region has terrible zoning laws. The legal head nodded slowly. It does. Irian closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. At minute 12, she whispered, Sir Ugly. His pen snapped. She leaned closer. Respectfully. A man across the table looked like he might faint. At minute 15, she slid the granola bar closer to him. You haven't eaten, she murmured. Your aura is grumpy. My aura, he repeated flatly. Yes, it's like a storm cloud in a suit. The CFO stared openly now. Irian pushed the bar away. I am not hungry. Zay unwrapped one loudly. Crinkle. Crinkle. I am, she said, biting into it. Also, you're wrong about the supplier margins. The supplier head gasped. She is. Irian stared at his notes, then at her, then back at the room. We will revisit that, he said carefully. The meeting ended in stunned silence. As executives filed out, they avoided Zay's gaze like she was radioactive. One man whispered, Is she allowed to do that? Another whispered back, I think she outranks God. When the room finally emptied, Irian stood slowly. You spoke out of turn, he said. You breathed dramatically, she replied. We all have flaws. You undermined my authority. You invited me, she said. That's on you. He stared at her. Hard. She stared back, chewing thoughtfully. You corrected me, he said. You were wrong, she shrugged. You brought food into my meeting. You skipped breakfast, she countered. Silence. Then, Irian laughed. It slipped out, short, quiet, uncontrolled. He froze. Zay grinned. There it is. He straightened instantly, expression hardening. That did not happen. Oh, it did, she said. I heard it. So did your soul. He turned away, furious. With her, with himself, with the unsettling lightness in his chest. Unacceptable. Behind him, Zay gathered her bag. See you at the next meeting, Sir Ugly, she said cheerfully. I'm bringing chips. The door closed behind her. Irian remained standing. Then, traitorously. The corner of his mouth twitched again. He scowled at his reflection in the glass. I will end this, he muttered. But the office had never felt so alive. And that was the problem. Irian Koval woke up laughing. It was quiet. Brief. Barely a sound. But it was laughter. He sat upright in bed immediately, heart pounding. As if he'd been caught committing a crime. The room was dark. Silent. Perfectly controlled. Nothing was funny. He pressed his lips together and stared at the far wall, jaw tight. Unacceptable, he muttered. He had slept through the night. That, too, was unacceptable. Normally his rest came in fragments, 2 hours here, 1 there, his mind always half alert, listening for threats that never came. Control demanded vigilance. Last night he had gone to bed irritated. Last night he had dreamed. That had not happened in years. He stood, dressed, and arrived at the office earlier than usual, intent on regaining equilibrium. The building reacted to him the way it always did. Security straightening, staff lowering their voices, the air subtly shifting as if something dangerous had entered the ecosystem. Except, "Good morning, sir," said the head of security, pausing mid-step. His eyes flicked past Irian, then back. He blinked. "Are you, well?" the man asked carefully. Irian stopped. "Define well." The man swallowed. "You seem lighter." Irian stared at him. The man paled. "Sir." Irian continued walking. In the executive elevator, his reflection looked the same. Sharp, controlled, dangerous, and yet... He frowned. His shoulders felt looser, his breathing deeper, his mind quieter. He hated it. By mid-morning, the floor buzzed with something unfamiliar. Not fear. Curiosity. People lingered longer, spoke more freely. A junior analyst laughed out loud during a meeting and didn't immediately apologize. Irian noticed everything. He also noticed that when Zay spoke, when she interrupted, corrected, or casually insulted him, the tension in the room dissolved instead of spiking, as if some invisible pressure valve had been opened. He did not like that either. During a strategy briefing, she leaned toward him and whispered, "You're doing the thing." He didn't look at her. "What thing?" "The brooding," she said. "It's excessive today." "I am not brooding." She tilted her head. "You are radiating it. If brooding were a fragrance, this would be eau de menace." He exhaled slowly. Across the table, the operations lead stiffened. "Sir," the man said nervously, should we continue?" Irian nodded once. "Yes." But his focus slipped. He caught himself smiling, again, when Zay passed him a note that read, "Stop frowning. You'll wrinkle the ugly." He crushed the paper without comment. Still, his chest felt lighter. Later. As he crossed the executive floor, conversations died the way they always did when he approached. Except one. "I'm telling you, the energy's different," someone whispered urgently. Another voice responded, hushed and reverent. "He's calmer." Irian paused just outside the corner. A third voice said it, Soft, automatic, instinctive. The Alpha seems pleased. The word hit the air like a dropped glass. Alpha. Silence followed. Irian stepped forward. Everyone froze, except Zay. She looked up from her tablet, brow furrowing. Alpha? She repeated. The room held its breath. Irian's gaze snapped to her. Too late. She stared between the employees, then back at him. Her eyes narrowed, not with fear, not with awe, but with curiosity sharp enough to cut. Wow, she said slowly. That explains so much. The employees looked like they might pass out. Irian's jaw tightened. Zay, he said calmly, warning threaded through the syllables. She smiled. Oh, she said. Don't worry. She leaned back in her chair, studying him openly now, like a puzzle she had just found the edge pieces to. I won't tell anyone. Beat. But I am going to ask questions. And for the first time since he'd taken control of the pack, Irian Koval felt it. Real fear, not of exposure, but of being seen. Zay had always been good at surviving by observation. You didn't last long being invisible unless you learned how to read rooms, moods, exits, and threats. You learned patterns, tells, silences that spoke louder than words. And Irian Koval was all patterns. He drank his coffee black, no sugar, no cream, same cup, same time. He never turned his back on doors. He never raised his voice, because he didn't need to. People moved before he asked. People stilled when he entered. People waited for him to breathe before they did. That wasn't CEO behavior. That was something else. She noticed how security shifted when he passed. Subtle, instinctive, like prey pretending they weren't prey. She noticed how meetings ended not when he dismissed them, but when his attention wandered. She noticed how people avoided touching him unless absolutely necessary. And she noticed how he noticed her. Not with lust, not with hunger, with vigilance, like she was a variable he hadn't planned for. That amused her greatly. So, she said one afternoon, strolling beside him as they walked the executive corridor, quick survey. He didn't slow. No. Too late, she said. Already started. He sighed, deeply. What do you want? She tapped her tablet. You're not spontaneous. You don't like surprises. You don't delegate control. You don't sit with your back to windows. Observation is not insight, he said coolly. Oh, but it is, she replied, when you're not hiding. He stopped walking. She didn't. She walked 3 more steps, realized he wasn't beside her, and turned. He was watching her very carefully now. Finish your thought, he said. She smiled. You're not human normal. A pause, not denial. Interesting. They resumed walking. In a meeting later that day, she pushed harder. He corrected a senior manager. She leaned forward. Actually, he's right. The room froze. Irian turned slowly. Her heart jumped, but she didn't back down. You are, she continued, pointing at the manager, but your data's old. He updated it last night. The manager looked like he might faint. Irian studied her. Then, miracle of miracles, he nodded. Correct, he said. The room erupted into quiet disbelief. Zay beamed. Progress. By the end of the day, she was buzzing with theories. Cult leader? No. Mob boss? Too clean. Secret billionaire vigilante? Tempting. Finally, as they stood waiting for the elevator, she tilted her head. So, she said casually, do you shed? Silence. The entire hallway went dead quiet. The elevator dinged. Irian did not move. Excuse me? He said softly. You know, she continued, unbothered. Hair, fur, seasonal transformation issues. I have no idea what you're implying. She shrugged. Just checking. Because if there's fur on the furniture, that needs to be disclosed. His eyes darkened. That is not funny. She grinned. Your people seem to think it is. Behind them, someone choked on air. The elevator doors opened. Irian stepped inside. She followed. As the doors slid shut, he spoke low and precise. "You are testing dangerous boundaries." She leaned against the wall, unfazed. "Correct," she said. "That's how you find out where they are." The elevator descended. Neither spoke again. But as the doors opened on the ground floor, Zay caught it, just for a second, his reflection in the mirrored wall. Not angry, not offended, amused, and very, very alert. "Oh yeah," she thought, "you're hiding something big, ugly, and whatever it was..." She had already found the scent. The request came at 8:47 p.m., which, in Zay's growing personal rulebook, already qualified it as suspicious. "Take these upstairs," Irian said, sliding a slim black folder across his desk without looking at her. "Penthouse." She glanced at the folder, then at him, then back at the folder. "Define upstairs," she said. "The top," he replied. She waited. He didn't elaborate. "Okay," she said slowly. "Follow-up question. Why?" "Because they need to be delivered." "That answers how," she said. "Not why." He finally looked at her. It was the look he used when people stopped asking questions. She smiled. "Great. Love mysteries." She took the folder and stood. "No snooping," he added calmly. She paused. "That feels targeted." His mouth twitched. "Go." The elevator ride was too quiet. Not the normal corporate silence. This was thicker, like the building itself was holding its breath. The numbers climbed. Private access only. Restricted. Authorized personnel. "Of course," Zay muttered. "Penthouse dungeon vibes." The elevator slowed, stopped. The doors slid open. Warm air hit her first. Not stale, not recycled. Alive. The space beyond the doors was massive, open, darkened, lit only by the city bleeding in through floor-to-ceiling windows. The penthouse didn't look lived in so much as claimed. Concrete, steel, wood, no softness anywhere. Zay stepped out. "Hello?" she called. "Friendly neighborhood assistant delivering boring paperwork?" The doors closed behind her with a soft, final thud. She froze. "Okay," she said. "That's rude." She took another step. Then, a sound. Low. Vibrational. Not loud, not aggressive, a growl. It rolled through the space like thunder under the floor. Every instinct in her body screamed wrong. Her pulse spiked. She swallowed. "Sir Ugly?" she called, forcing levity into her voice. "If this is a prank, I want it on record that I hate it." The growl came again. Closer. Deeper. The lights flickered. Zay backed up slowly, clutching the folder to her chest. Her mind raced. Big dog, exotic pet, unlicensed security system with teeth? She laughed once, sharp and nervous. "Okay," she said. "New boundary discovered." Something moved in the shadows. Tall. Too tall. She couldn't see it clearly, but she could feel it. Eyes on her. Tracking. Evaluating. Her heart slammed. "Irian," she said, dropping the jokes now. "You should probably come get your... whatever this is." Silence. Then, another growl, right behind her. The sound wasn't threatening. It was restrained, controlled, barely held. Zay didn't scream. She turned. Slowly, the city lights flared against glass and reflected back at her. Eyes. Not human. Very familiar. "Oh," she whispered. The realization hit her all at once. The habits, the silence, the word alpha. Her grip tightened on the folder. "Well," she said faintly, adrenaline buzzing through her veins, "this explains the shedding question." The growl deepened, and somewhere behind her, a voice said her name. Zay. Too late. The door to the truth had already opened. Zay did not faint. This was important. She considered it, briefly, like a polite thought you dismiss, but ultimately decided it would give the room too much satisfaction. Instead, she stared. At the wolves, plural, large, upright, Terrifying in the way apex predators are terrifying. Not loud, not chaotic, just certain. They filled the penthouse like a nightmare that had passed a zoning permit. Some leaned against walls. Some sat at a long table that definitely cost more than her annual salary. One had a tablet. A tablet. The growling she'd heard earlier faded into a low, ambient tension, like a bass note under reality. Someone cleared their throat. It echoed. Zay shifted the folder under her arm. "Okay," she said calmly, far too calmly. "Either I'm having a stress-induced hallucination, or Irian Koval has opinions about Congress." No one laughed. They all stared at her. Dozens of eyes. Golden, silver, dark, predatory, evaluating. Irian stepped forward. Human now. Perfect suit. Perfect posture. Perfectly controlled. Except his eyes. Those were still wrong. "Zay," he said evenly, "you were not supposed to be here." She looked at him, then around the room, then back at him. "I leave you alone for 10 minutes, she said, gesturing broadly. "And you start a dog parliament?" Silence detonated. One wolf choked. Another made a sound that might have been a snort. Someone at the table dropped a pen. Zay pressed on. Because momentum is everything in moments like this. "What is this?" she continued. "A Senate? A council? Do you vote? Is there a filibuster? Because I will absolutely filibuster if someone tries to bite me." "Zay," Irian warned. She raised a finger. "No, you don't get to Zay me after this." A tall wolf with a scar across his muzzle leaned forward. "She speaks to you boldly, Alpha." Zay snapped her head toward him. "Do not call him that like I didn't hear it." Every wolf in the room stiffened. A beat passed. Then another. Respect rippled through the space. Real, palpable, dangerous. "She's unafraid," murmured a woman with silver eyes. "I am afraid," Zay corrected instantly. "I'm just also offended." Irian rubbed his temple. "This is the council," he said. "You were never meant to see this." "Well," Zay said, looking around again. "Congratulations, you've been perceived." The scarred wolf smiled slowly. "She mocks us." "She copes with humor," Irian said automatically. Zay paused, looked at him. "Oh," she said, "you do know me." He froze. That was when it happened. A laugh. Not quiet, not restrained, not hidden behind closed doors. A real laugh, low, startled, entirely unplanned, ripped out of Irian Koval's chest. The room went still. Wolves stared, mouths parted. Someone whispered, "He laughed." Zay blinked, then smiled. "Oh," she said softly. "That's new." Irian covered his mouth too late. The damage was done. The Alpha King, CEO, apex predator, living myth, was laughing, and for the first time in that penthouse, no one was afraid. They were watching her, not as prey, not as a threat, but as something else entirely. Zay adjusted the folder under her arm and squared her shoulders. "Okay," she said. "So, dog parliament." She nodded once, decisive. "Who's in charge of snacks?" The explanation did not come with thunder. No chanting, no dramatic lighting, no ancient prophecy unfurled from a scroll. It came with chairs being pulled out and someone offering Zay a bottle of water. She took it. "Thanks," she said. "If I'm going to process interspecies corporate governance, hydration feels important." The council, dog parliament, in her mental notes, settled. Some shifted back into human form. Others remained very much not. One wolf adjusted his tie with his teeth before remembering he had hands now. Irian stood at the head of the table. "This company," he began, voice steady, "is a front." Zay nodded. "Of course it is." "For the pack," he continued. "We operate in plain sight. We protect our own. We maintain order. Urban werewolves," she summarized, "with quarterly reports." A murmur of offense rippled. "We are not werewolves," someone snapped. Zay raised a hand. Apologies. Wolves with LinkedIn. That went over better. Irian continued, resigned now. The Alpha oversees both structures, human and pack. And you, Zay said, pointing at him, are the overworked middle manager of destiny. His mouth twitched. We've existed alongside humans for centuries, said the silver-eyed woman. Hidden, controlled. Zay squinted. So the secrecy is cultural, not shame-based. Yes. Good, she said, because hiding is exhausting. Irian folded his arms. You are taking this remarkably well. She shrugged. I've been bullied by humans with less teeth. That earned a few low laughs. So, she said, ticking points off on her fingers, you run a supernatural pack. You use a corporation as camouflage. You accidentally assigned me to the apex predator because he got called ugly and spiraled. That is not, Irian started. That is exactly what happened, she said kindly. A pause, then begrudging nods. Zay leaned back in her chair. Okay, follow-up questions. Several wolves straightened. Do you have health care? She asked. Because claws look like a liability. Yes, Irian said. Comprehensive. Dental? Yes. Fur maintenance stipend? A scarred wolf coughed. We have grooming allowances. Excellent, she said. So HR is species-specific. The room broke. Laughter, real laughter, echoed off glass and concrete. Irian exhaled, tension bleeding out of his posture. You should be afraid, he said quietly. Zay looked at him. Really looked. At the control, the burden, the loneliness. I was afraid before I met you, she said. This is just weirder. That landed harder than anything else she'd said. The silver-eyed woman studied her. You would accept this world? Zay smiled. I already live in it. Mine just has worse management. Irian closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, something had shifted. Very well, he said. You know the truth. She perked up. Do I get a raise? A beat. Yes, he said. She grinned. I love Dog Parliament. The gala smelled like money and regret. Crystal chandeliers, live strings, enough champagne to drown poor decisions. The kind of event where everyone smiled too wide and laughed half a second too late. Zay stood near the edge of the ballroom, clutching a flute she had not paid for, and therefore did not trust. Relax, she muttered to herself. It's just rich people in costumes. Across the room, the board had assembled. They were polished, predatory, human, but only technically. Power hummed around them in a way she could now recognize. Not pack, not alpha, something adjacent. Pressure. Irian stood at the center of it all, immaculately dressed, lethal in a tuxedo. He looked like he belonged to the night, to the cameras, to the unspoken understanding that this room bent around him. He did not look at her. That stung more than she expected. Temporary always ended like this. You made yourself useful. You made noise. You made them laugh. Then you were gone. The board chair leaned close to him, voice low but urgent. Zay couldn't hear the words, but she could read the tension. Control, image, stability. She sighed. Figures, she said quietly. Dog Parliament has a PR department. She set her untouched champagne down and stepped back, already halfway out emotionally. That was when Irian moved, not toward the board, toward her. Heads turned, cameras followed. The shift was immediate. People sensed something was happening before they understood what. He stopped in front of her. Zay, he said. She blinked. Sir Ugly. A few nearby executives stiffened. He ignored them. I need you to attend tonight, he said. She waited for the rest. As what? For how long? Under what pretense? That's it? She asked. Yes. She studied his face. You're aware, she said carefully, that temporary assistants don't usually attend galas. His gaze held hers. You are not usual. The room leaned in. Zay felt the weight of 100 watching eyes. She smiled, small but real. "Fine," she said, "but if anyone asks, I'm here for the snacks." He inclined his head. Accepted. Cameras flashed. The board chair frowned. And somewhere in the ballroom, the pack exhaled as one. Because the Alpha had made a choice, and everyone, human and otherwise, had noticed. The apology was not on the program. This was important. Zay discovered this because the program, printed on thick, gilt-free paper, listed the evening's highlights as keynote address, board recognition awards, strategic vision announcement, dessert, sponsored. There was no bullet point for public emotional vulnerability from a man who terrifies cities, which is how she knew something was wrong. The lights dimmed. The chatter softened. The string quartet did that thing where they stopped mid-note like they'd just realized they were in danger. Irian stepped onto the stage. Tall, immaculate, controlled. The room leaned forward like prey pretending not to be prey. Zay crossed her arms. "Oh no," she murmured. "He's doing a thing." He took the microphone, did not smile. "Good evening," he said. The crowd murmured back, synchronized, obedient. "I did not plan to speak tonight." Zay winced. "Oh, this is already bad." The board chair stiffened. Irian continued. "This company prides itself on excellence, on control, on power." He paused. "And tonight, I am going to do something that violates all three." A ripple went through the room. Zay's eyebrows climbed. He exhaled slowly. "I owe someone an apology." Gasps. Actual gasps. Zay whispered, "Sir." "No." His eyes found her instantly, locked, held. "This apology," he said, "is public because the fault was public." The board chair started to rise. Irian raised a hand. He sat back down. Zay mouthed, "Wow." "I abused my authority," Irian said plainly. "I allowed ego to dictate consequence. I mistook silence for respect." The room had gone very still. "I retaliated against an employee for speaking freely." Zay blinked. Once. Twice. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He's apologizing to me." "I failed," Irian continued, "to see value where it existed long before my attention found it." He turned. Fully. Toward her. Zay's brain short-circuited. "No," she mouthed. "Do not point at me. Absolutely do not—" "Zay," he said into the microphone. Every head snapped to her. Spotlight. Literal spotlight. She squinted. "Rude." She was invisible, Irian said, by design, by neglect, by systems that allowed a person to exist without recognition. A murmur of discomfort rippled. Zay shifted her weight. "Okay, but now I'm too visible." "She corrected me when others would not," he continued. "She disrupted complacency. She spoke when silence was expected." Zay leaned toward the nearest executive. "Is this what growth feels like?" The executive did not blink. "I wronged her," Irian said, "and I will correct it." He gestured. A screen behind him lit up. "Promotion announcement. Executive operations lead effective immediately." Zay stared. "Oh," she said faintly. "That seems excessive." Applause exploded. Real applause. Startled applause. Some of it confused. Some of it terrified. Irian raised a hand again. Silence fell. "One more thing," he said. Zay closed her eyes. "There's always one more thing." He looked at her. "Your name," he said. "The system lists none." She opened one eye. "Yeah, that tracks." "You will choose it," he said. "Now." The room held its breath. Zay stepped forward, took the microphone. "Well," she said, "this is deeply uncomfortable." Laughter broke out, nervous but grateful. "My name," she continued, "is Zay. Simple. Sharp. Hers. Not borrowed. Not assigned. Zay." Applause roared again. Louder this time. She handed the mic back to Irian, leaned in just enough for only him to hear, and whispered, Still ugly, though. His lips twitched. Then, he smiled. Open. Unhidden. Public. The room lost its mind. Cameras flashed like a riot. The board chair looked like he needed a drink and a priest. Zay stepped back into the crowd, heart pounding, grin unstoppable. She hadn't just been seen, she had been named. And somewhere deep in the bones of the company, everything shifted. The press descended like it smelled blood and bonus checks, microphones, cameras, questions thrown like darts, sharp, fast, and designed to stick. Irian Koval stood at the podium again, jacket off now, sleeves rolled just enough to suggest humanity without surrender. The Alpha King, the CEO, the man who terrified boardrooms, cornered by journalists with excellent posture and terrible intentions. Zay hovered just off stage, nursing a stolen dessert and watching the spectacle with the satisfaction of someone who had accidentally rewritten corporate history using sarcasm. Mr. Koval, is this a rebranding strategy? Was the apology scripted? Who is she to you? Irian lifted a hand. The room quieted. He didn't look at the press. He looked at Zay. Every camera followed his gaze. This, he said calmly, is not a strategy. Zay mouthed, uh-oh. This, he continued, is accountability. Someone scoffed. Another reporter pushed forward. You're saying a single employee changed the culture of a multi-billion-dollar corporation? Irian nodded. Yes. Zay choked on mousse. She challenged me, he said. Publicly, repeatedly, loudly. Zay waved weakly. Sorry. She reminded me that power without perspective becomes brittle. Zay leaned toward the PR director. Is he allowed to say that? The PR director whispered. He's never been stopped before. A reporter raised her voice. Then how would you describe her role in all this? Irian didn't hesitate. The woman who humbled me. The room erupted. Gasps. Murmurs. Someone dropped a pen in slow motion. Zay froze. Oh no, she whispered. That's a headline. Cameras swung toward her. Mrs. A. Is that true? How did you do it? Are you two involved? She stepped forward before security could panic. Yes, she said. Hi. Hello? I am Zay. Please stop shouting my name like I owe you money. Laughter rippled. She took a mic. I did not humble him, she said. He tripped. I just didn't catch him. More laughter. And for the record, she added, I called him ugly once. Everything else was consequences. Irian coughed. Someone asked, What's next for you? Zay thought for half a second. Paid, she said. Visible. Named. Applause. Another reporter smirked. And for him? She glanced sideways at Irian. He met her eyes. Therapy, she said. Probably. The room lost it. Security finally ushered them toward the exit, flashes still popping, questions still flying. As they walked side by side through the chaos, him calm, her grinning, they didn't look like equals on paper. But the air bent around both of them now. At the doors, she leaned in, just enough for him to hear. Ugly suits you better when you smile. He paused, then smiled again. And for the first time, it wasn't power that followed them out. It was presence. The building was quieter now. Not empty, never empty, but calm in the way a place becomes when it finally trusts itself. Morning light spilled through the glass walls of the executive floor. No alarms, no tension, no instinctive flinching when footsteps approached. Zay arrived early, as usual, not because she had to, because she liked it. She set her bag down, kicked off her shoes under the desk she still wasn't used to owning, and stared out at the city. The same city that once swallowed her whole now reflected her back in 1,000 windows. Named. Paid. Seen. Progress was weird like that. Behind her, a door opened softly. You're early, Irian said. She didn't turn. You're late. He smiled at that. Small, fond, unguarded. That smile had become a problem. How's the world today? He asked. She considered. Still chaotic, still unfair, but slightly funnier. I'll take it. He set 2 coffees down on her desk. One black, one with too much sugar. She raised an eyebrow. You remembered. I learn, he said. She took a sip, eyes closing briefly. Wow. Growth. They stood there for a moment, side by side, watching the city wake up. No pack, no board, no cameras, just quiet. You know, she said thoughtfully, if I hadn't gone for coffee that day, I would still be ugly, he finished. She laughed, soft, real. You're not ugly, she admitted. You're just aggressively symmetrical. He accepted that with dignity. They didn't need declarations, or promises, or dramatic endings. They had something better, mutual recognition. She glanced at him. Hey. Yes? Thanks for seeing me. He met her gaze. Thank you for refusing to disappear. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, 2 people stood exactly where they were meant to be. And somewhere between laughter, chaos, and one very ill-advised coffee run, a story changed its mind about who mattered. If you loved Zay and Sir Ugly's chaos, confidence, and comedy, don't forget to subscribe. More stories, more drama, more laughter. You don't want to miss what comes next.